Hi, this is Dave, and before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners. And that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 in the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars.
But Clones at 6 years old in 2002 was absolutely unreal. That was another world, truly took over my own.
Hello there, this is Dave and you're listening to What Does Star Wars Mean to You, the show where we talk to all kinds of fans of Star Wars. From industry insiders to indie artists, from mega collectors to obsessive mythologists, to find out how Star Wars impacted their life. Here's the thing, there's a lot of ways to look at Star Wars and it's all from a certain point of view, and that point of view is yours. Now, I've always loved hearing people's passionate points of view on Star Wars because, for me, it reveals new ways of looking at the franchise. Also, let's just face it, it's fun to talk Star Wars. My guest today lives for geek entertainment. He's written for WeTheNerdy.com, StarTrek.com, Fandom, iHeart Radio, and more. He's been a collaborator for the Geekvolution channel on YouTube. In the podcast world, he's the co-producer and co-host at Morning Drive Media. He's the creator of Sith Happens and the co-creator and co-host of the weekly news and entertainment live show Anytime with Ken and Alden. And back in 2019, he started a show that took the podcast space by hyperdrive. Please welcome the host of Ahch-to Radio, a Star Wars podcast, Alden Diaz.
Hello. That was so sweet, man. I really appreciate that. And when I knew you were making an intro, I was like, this guy gets it. That's very kind, very kind.
Of course, and it helps to kind of set, I think expectations is too broad of a word, but gives background to the listener. So they're like, oh, who's this guy? I got it in 30 seconds.
Absolutely. I think it's important to sort of set the table, and when people hear certain things, it's like almost like your brain sort of gears up for certain kinds of conversations. If you know you're going to be listening to an actor, you might expect something more high energy. If you're listening to an author, whatever it is. If you're listening to a radio guy like me, you're just waiting for that person to shut up. So I apologies to everybody. But
are you ready to share with the world what Star Wars mean to you?
I am so ready, because these are the conversations that we all dreamed of having when we were kids, when no one was asking us what Star Wars meant to us, and now we're able to share it with each other and our listeners. And so it's always good to maintain perspective and know that we're in the opposite of a dark time right now.
It's absolutely true. So let me start with something I call 5 with the Force. This is 5 basic questions I ask all my guests, just to get your basic Star Wars baseline. Question number 1, which Star Wars movie is your go-to favorite?
My go-to favorite is Return of the Jedi. It's my favorite Star Wars film and just my favorite film. I love it very deeply. Does that mean that it's the one that I throw on for background noise? No, because that would probably be Solo or Rise of Skywalker at this point, more so Solo, because I love Return of the Jedi so much that it can't be easy listening. That's how I am with Return and with Last Jedi. I fundamentally cannot walk around while they're on or anything like that. But Return of the Jedi, it means a lot to me. I think about it every day. It has informed so many things that I've done. Love it.
Is it that when you turn it on, you have to be laser focused onto the movie?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just because I think the art that speaks to us continues to speak to us differently as we get older. And so every time I watch Return of the Jedi, I feel like I'm excited to get together with an old friend. And it's like, what else is there? What adventure are we going on next? Even though it's the same adventure, I know we're going to start at Jabba's palace and end on Endor. I know this. Or I guess technically we start on the second Death Star. I know these things, but it still requires my full engagement. I have to dress up nice and really wine and dine for Return of the Jedi, which is not to say that I don't love all the movies. I do, but there are some that, like, I watched Solo after I'd finished school and was waiting to get my first professional radio job. I was working in the mall just to have money to pay my bills while I was waiting to get hired somewhere. And I saw Solo probably, 8 or 9 times just after shifts because we had a movie theater attached to the mall. So that became an unwinding movie in my mind.
Yes, yeah. The association of it is it's post-work, you're ready to relax, let's watch some Solo.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have to grab a 1d6 for this one.
Oh, man. No, it's so funny that you said I have to grab a D6 because I'm sitting here holding chance cubes from Phantom Menace, just fiddling with them because I need something to fiddle with.
I rolled a 6, so it's, what is your favorite spaceship or vehicle?
My favorite spaceship in Star Wars is, I don't know why I hesitated. I knew the answer. It's the N1 Starfighter. I adore the N1 Starfighter. It was the first, that and a Boss Nass action figure were the first 2 toys that I had. I'll be 28 at the time of this recording. I'll be 28 pretty soon. So I was right there. Attack of the Clones was my first one in theaters. So that first toy line that was out, aside from Clones, was the Menace toys that had been around for a few years at that point. And God, I'm not even like yellow's my favorite color because it's not, but it's just something about the yellow on that and the way that R2 fit into it, and the fact that maybe it's the fact that a kid was flying it. I don't know, but it just imprinted on me so powerfully, and to see it now get this return with sort of the Mandalorian Batmobile tricked out hot rod version has been very cool.
What is your favorite line to quote?
It's such a difficult one because it's like the context and the tone. Like when I was working on a rock morning show in Miami, we used to do like traffic reports, whatever, in and out of commercial break or weather. And I would constantly do we're fine, how are you? Like I would always throw that in when I could. I had it on a sound drop. So like there's tons of Han lines that I quote. It really does depend on the day, but I can tell you my favorite line, and the one that if someone says, say a Star Wars line, it's always Rian Johnson's beautiful Luke line from Last Jedi of, to say that if the Jedi die, the light dies is vanity. That is so brilliant. Like it struck me in the theater and just shook me to my core to hear that character say those words. It was just absolutely profound. So that's one that I will always go to. I've never gotten to meet Mark Hamill before, but if I ever do get the chance, and I hope I do, I would love to tell him how much he murdered that line delivery. Oh, it's so good.
Almost every line in that movie, he pulls off really well. And just it's a fantastic performance of this character and representation of this character who kind of lost a lot and is trying to figure shit out in his life where he is now.
Absolutely. Yeah, it just sort of it rocks you in the same way it rocks Rey at the right point in the story to think, wow, all the years I haven't seen this man, and from her perspective, I didn't know he was even real until a couple days ago at that point.
Yeah.
To hear how much he's been contemplating, it just gives you so much to think about and to try to be present and to try to not internalize self-importance. Like he's sort of saying in that moment, it's not all about the Jedi. Like we're not the magic eraser for the galaxy that could just make every problem go away. He's lost that ego. And is reckoning with what it means to let go of ego. Do I matter? Does any of it matter? Very adult questions.
Right off of that, can you do any Star Wars impressions or impersonations?
Oh, I mean, I feel like everybody does a Palpatine, right? Like everybody at least tries to. Like my favorite Palpatine line is probably, "You have paid the price for your lack of vision," but I'm not like good at it. But I also love impersonating Thrawn these days. I mean, who doesn't? Doing like the "for a Ronin such as you," like everything he says in Rebels, like, oh, I will not be accepting surrenders at this time. Like, it's insane. Like, it's an insane performance. And because I wasn't around for when the Thrawn trilogy was coming out, I was a toddler in the 90s. I wasn't born yet for the first Thrawn. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, EU listeners. I'm sorry. I apologize for making anyone potentially feel old. I don't know. So you tell me, was that the voice that fans had imagined Thrawn having? Because isn't there an Heir to the Empire where he has a deep voice?
I'm trying to. It's hard for me to imagine what I thought his voice was like when I first read the books.
Yeah, it's hard to go back.
Yeah, it's hard to go back because Rebels, once he came to life in Rebels, it just kind of supplanted everything that was in my head about him already.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense.
And my final question with 5 with the Force, besides the movies, what is your favorite Star Wars content? This could be a TV show, a comic book, a novel, a game, toys.
I will recuse myself, not from the question, but from any TV answer, because if I go down that rabbit hole, we're going to be here for another 2 hours as I live on air try to figure out if I'm going to say Rebels or Ahsoka or Kenobi. Those are my top 3 shows. There you go. There's a bonus answer. But I will say that the High Republic deeply speaks to me. I'm a High Republic completionist. I read it all in order to the best of my ability. You know, sometimes things come out a little bit out of order, but every issue, every comic, every short story, every audio drama, all of that I consume very, very intensely. I love it. It's amazing. I love talking to people about it, texting my friends when the book comes out. That has been a wonderful experience and a very welcome addition to the mythology.
Now, I don't want to have you quit this right now, but I'm going to admit something to you.
Go on.
I have not started the High Republic yet. And
don't worry. Don't worry. I would never walk away from that because I'm excited for you. Because with Acolyte coming, you're going to see the Acolyte trailer, and I know it, man. You're going to be like, remember when I was talking to Alden? Maybe I should grab that first book, Light of the Jedi. And once you do, because the difficulty, I think, historically with Star Wars, particularly in novels, because comics being a visual visual medium, they have the ability to still engage on that level. The novels in Star Wars, it's very hard to capture the pace and the feel of Star Wars cinema.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, of the pace, the wipe transitions, the action. It's just hard. It's hard to write that. That first High Republic book and several others after is as close as we've gotten to cinematic Star Wars book. It opens with a disaster and you are immediately the book is counting you down and the book is launching you forward. Literally it's counting you down. You're this many hours till disaster. This it's just it's so good. That was the sound effect of a book ramping up. So yeah, highly recommend.
Well, I am very excited to read it. And usually when a guest is super into it, I ask, what is it about it that sucked you in? You talked about the pacing, the cinematic feel of it. Is there anything else about the High Republic that just really speaks to you on a higher level than maybe some of the movies have?
For me, it's the fact that I go to Star Wars primarily as a fantasy, as mythology. I appreciate, of course, we talked about, the N1, and we all have our ships and our blasters and our speeders that we prefer, our walkers and suits and, escape pods and droids. That's all wonderful. The sci-fi elements, the hardened tactile elements, but I love engaging with it as a parable, fable, and something very aspirational and heavy and force heavy, and the High Republic has leaned into that so much. Of course, technology is a huge part of it. There's a lot of hyperspace science that is introduced and expanded upon in the era. There's a lot of stuff about scans and signals and technology to create impenetrable borders on different points in the galaxy. There's a lot of that, but it is so much about what is the Jedi Knight in terms of the Jedi ideal. What were they like at their height? How were they challenged in a pre-Palpatine world? What are the fights that your Arthurian larger than life heroes would face that are not their arch nemesis? And how do they navigate that? Because this is during the time where the Sith are gone. to the public eye. And there are no, at the time of me saying this, there are no Sith in this era at all. You get a vision of one from years past. And so it's recontextualized them in a way that we haven't really gotten to see them in ways that are bold, colorful, inclusive, sexy, frankly. Like it's a horny era. And yeah, it's just really speaks to the sword and sorcery Star Wars fan in the way that I would imagine people that love the tech and stuff probably gravitate more toward, something like Clone Wars, or, people that like sort of the rebellion, boots on the ground stuff, of course, have Andor. So it's just checks my particular boxes.
That's great. I absolutely get that. Now let's go back to the start of your Star Wars fandom. What was your first interaction with Star Wars, and can you walk me through that experience?
I can, actually, because it always sort of humors me that it was something so, which I guess it was for a lot of people, something so seemingly insignificant. It was that a couple cousins that I have had 2 walkie-talkies, and one walkie-talkie was a Stormtrooper helmet and one was a Vader helmet, and I didn't know what they were, but I liked the way they looked. And then I think one of them had Phantom Menace on VHS, I want to say, and it probably would have been based on the time. And they told me that the Vader helmet was the little boy in that movie. And I thought, how? Like, he doesn't look anything like this. Like, what does that mean? And so that sort of idea of this is bigger than I think it is, and adults know about it too, but kids are also allowed to watch it. Like, it had this mystique to it that just really fascinated me. And I was a big, and still am a big, nerd of a lot of different things, comic books and fantasy and science fiction and pro wrestling and all that. And I was very much into, collecting knowledge. I was a visual dictionary kid, Marvel encyclopedia kid, that. And so then I'm like, I gotta, what's the deal with this? Who is this? What is this story? And then I realized very quickly that it was kind of everything that I liked on aesthetic levels and deeper levels, and it caught me at the right time. We started talking about Return of the Jedi a little bit. That film, in terms of, like, I grew up just with my mom, and so, like, that movie helped me process the absence of the father and the what a reconciliation could be like, and what it means to face that demon that wasn't there but is always kind of there. And then these are like formative, like I'm 7 years old, like realizing this and knowing that I kind of was Luke but wanted to be Han, but also thought, that Leia was like so larger than life. And it taught me very early on that it was every story, including mine, which was the biggest thing.
Yeah, I think I heard on one of your podcasts you say, I hope I get this right. It's some, it shows small things through big things, or it reveals small through the bigness, and where it's like the destruction of the Death Star is huge, but really it's just coming of age, where we can all relate to that.
Absolutely, yeah. Smallness through bigness, and conversely, bigness through smallness, which we see a lot in there too. And not realizing that you're internalizing those ideas, and then when you're a little bit older, they hit. And then when you're a little bit older, a few more of them hit. Like, teenage Star Wars fan is like, oh, wow, this was like American history? Like, wow, I didn't realize that. And then, or world history. And then a Star Wars fan of their early 20s is like, I am actually concerned about taxation. Like, those things all start to land in layers through really small, tiny examples. I work with, we mentioned his name in the opening introduction, my partner and friend Ken Knapsack of the Force Center podcast feed. He has done a whole analytical episode on the Dexter's Diner scene in Attack of the Clones, and like what that actually means. And when Dex says the difference between knowledge and wisdom, like that's the indictment of the entire era. And it all happens right there at a diner. Like, but then these huge things, like you said, what is the destruction of the Death Star? Yes, it's a crushing blow to the forces of fascism. It's a hero realizing that he can indeed tap into the greater magic. But it's also, I left home for the first time, found a job, and succeeded at that job.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really a great kind of analogy of how it resonates. Now you mentioned that Phantom Menace, you may have been exposed to Phantom Menace at an earlier age. Do you remember the order of the movies you saw them in?
I do. I was exposed to Phantom Menace, probably didn't sit down and watch it in full, but I know I had seen the pod race, and I know I had seen the pod race arcade game, and like Phantom Menace existed in my cultural lens. Attack of the Clones is the first one I see in theater. So it's either the original trilogy, silver slipcase VHS box set, I believe that's the widescreen, and then Attack of the Clones, or scratch that, reverse it. It's those four. OT and Attack of the Clones are the ones that built the whole thing. But Clones at 6 years old in 2002 was absolutely unreal. That was another world, truly took over my own, and I realized not only do I love this more than anything, which was a tall order because there was, Spidey and X-Men and Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and all these things. So it was a lot of competing for the hearts and minds of a child back then, and still is. But Attack of the Clones was, not only do I love this, I want to be a part of it. I want to know how it's made. I want to work in entertainment somehow. It very deeply affecting movie.
By that point, with the books, with the toys, with the video games, there was so much to dive into. Did you relish that feeling of being introduced into this world and being able to like just dive into this very vast support world of Star Wars?
I absolutely did. It made me feel like I was speaking a language that only a few people spoke. Turns out it was not a few. It was, in fact, a hell of a lot. It was a whole ass culture that was just hiding,
Yes.
It was, we didn't really have the same internet. It was the very early days of social. There was like forums, look it up if you're younger than I am. And that sort of was starting to emerge, but you would get the idea like when one other kid was like, is that General Grievous? Like on the cover of your book? And you'd be like, it is? You know about General Grievous? Like that extra stuff became the currency for finding your people, which now is extremely easy. You tweet a picture of Zeb right now and I'll get 10 people that are like, I love Zeb. Like it was not that easy. And I know even then I'm speaking from a privileged place, because for the generation above me, it was way harder.
Yeah.
Infinitely harder.
Yeah.
So if you are a teenager listening to this show, it is your responsibility to make sure that it gets even easier for the next kids. And that's the beauty of it. Like the sequel kids right now, I think about them all the time, because in 10 years time, first of all, I think they're going to be awesome because they will have had the most of it, the most kinds of it, the most diverse version of it, but they are going to have no idea what it's like to not have Star Wars. They had Star Wars at Disney World. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's a different planet Earth right now.
I want to talk about, you've been doing Ahch-to Radio, and I'm never exactly sure how to pronounce Ahch-to. Is it Ahch-to?
See, I say Ahch-to, but the reason why I never correct anybody is because Rian Johnson says Ahch-to. But Rian Johnson didn't create the planet. And I don't have audio or footage of J.J. Abrams saying it, so it's tomato right now.
That's another thing. Here's one thing I love about Star Wars is things aren't always said the same. In that Han Solo, that's a 3PO, C-3PO, Goldenrod. They just have. Each person kind of has a way of addressing another person that's very real that I don't see in a lot of other movies, especially fantasy or sci-fi movies. I just find that really fascinating.
I love that too. Like Mon Mothma says, Cassian Andor, and Luthen says, Cassian Andor. Like, it's like, I know they're the same words, but it adds so much character to just let them say it how they want to.
It absolutely does. So, in the world of Ahch-to Radio, why did you first decide to do it? And what has your interaction with fans or people who have touched Star Wars been like for you?
So Ahch-to Radio started because, we touched on it a little bit. I work in radio professionally. I've been doing that since 2018. I was in school for it before then for broadcasting, television and radio broadcasting, but mostly radio and audio and stuff. And I worked for iHeart Radio for a while, and I've produced on rock stations, on 90s stations, on variety stations, morning shows and things, and been on morning shows and hosted a little bit myself. And in that time, I realized just how much I liked interviewing, something I'd only done a little bit of before that. I have a background doing like debate in high school and like theater and things like that. So I've always been comfortable talking to people. But then I realized in my Star Wars fandom, like I hadn't blended them. And I was listening to different shows at the time. I already name checked Force Center. There were some other ones that aren't really around anymore, but it was like, wow, people are talking about this. And they're doing it on a semi-professional or fully professional level. I'm about to be a professional, and then at that 2019 I was. It's like, why don't I create it? And you mentioned Sith Happens in the intro. That was my first Star Wars podcast back in the lead up to Force Awakens. I was still a kid. I was out of high school.
Wow.
And it was me and some buddies just talking as we led up to the movie. And then it's like, that was fun. We're not gonna do it anymore. And then I thought, like, what if I really combined my influences in terms of radio, in terms of loving Star Wars? I love Inside the Actors Studio with the great James Lipton, rest in peace. And the idea of doing my version of that for Star Wars, and specifically for Star Wars people, quote unquote, Star Wars people, like they're their own species, that idea was really appealing to me, and being able to dive into the nitty gritty, not just of what do you like about it, but what is it about you that makes you like that about it? That type of stuff fascinates me. Like, just an example, like Delilah Dawson is one of my favorite people that I've talked to recently, who's written Inquisitor, Rise of the Red Blade, Phasma, Black Spire. Fantastic author and wonderful person. And our episode is mostly about her growing up doing art and her family history and her career stuff and being neurodivergent. Like, Star Wars is in there, but it's like, but why? Like, in the same things that fascinated us about George Lucas, it's like we're not fascinated by George Lucas because he created the lightsaber. We're fascinated by George Lucas because he was an anthropology student that deeply understood why that would be an iconic thing. And I think that, like, the why and the why behind the why is really important. So for your next question, it sort of ties into that. Is like, what are my interactions like with other Star Wars fans, whether they listen to my show or not, or whether they have a show or not, or if they're just it was Emma Fife who used to work for Collider. I believe she works for Fandom now as a gaming producer and was host of Collider Jedi Council for a while. She has talked about participatory fandom versus curative fandom. That curative fandom is wonderful and they want to know everything and watch everything and enjoy it, but participatory fandom is like, I gotta be in there, I have to know it, and I have to make something related to it. I have to make a show like you and I do, or to make art, I have to make crafts, whatever it is. Cosplay, of course, is probably the biggest thing. That side of it has developed so many true passionate friendships. Like, you and I have never spoken verbally or outside of email until tonight, recording this.
Exactly.
But the conversation is so easy because something so key to us is this thing. And then that's been the biggest takeaway is when you say something on a show, which is something that every podcaster will have, and it's a great feeling, and someone says, I'd never heard it like that before, but I'm glad you said it, or I didn't think anyone else had that opinion, or like those little things, they matter. Like, they really matter more than views or ad money or any of the bullshit that comes along with the content space. It's important that you can say something and somebody for a split second feels less isolated in their love of Star Wars or whatever it is. There's a quote that I love that Viola Davis said in a Actors on Actors that she did. And she says, we go to movies to feel less alone. And that is 100% what participating in Star Wars is.
That's true. Absolutely. I 100% agree. I think that's a great way of phrasing it because it touches upon how it's like that need of people to be heard and to be felt. And that's what we're interacting with right now is being heard and being felt. Now, there's a lot of ways to talk about Star Wars. You can talk about it, you can attack it from a love of cinematography, the love of story. You can talk about theory. You can talk about what you think the creators meant when they did a certain thing. What is your favorite way to talk about Star Wars? I mean, to me, it sounds like you really love to talk about Star Wars in the mythological sense and the sociological sense.
Absolutely. You're spot on with both of those. I love talking about it like it's an evolving text because it is. And everybody has expectations. I would be a liar if I said I didn't have expectations and wants and things that I think would be amazing and cool. But I truly, it sounds so serious for enjoying movies, TVs, and comics and books and games. But I truly try to train myself to leave expectations at the door so I can enjoy it in the way that speaks to me the most. The reasons why I like it, I try to nurture those things like I'm growing a plant or something, which for the record, I can't do. Plants die when they're in the care. When they're in the care of Alden Diaz, plants fucking die. But the idea that I should judge it against what I want always just felt wrong to me. And like, that's part of fandom. I it frustrates me, but I try to accept it. If you go into a movie and you say, that's not what I wanted, I get that that's disappointing. But I love Star Wars so much that I'm like, it doesn't matter what I want. What happened is what happened. And the second that you accept that, that's where I love to talk about Star Wars. It's like, what happened in this show or this trilogy or this game or book or whatever is what happened. I will analyze it and read it and watch it the same way you would history. And yes, there is a fascinating behind the scenes layer to it, but that's a separate conversation. Why Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker exist in the way they do, differ in the way they do, don't differ in certain ways is film history stuff, which I'm very interested in. And if they ever published a book called Why is the Sequel Trilogy the Way It Is, I would read the hell out of that book. I love the sequel trilogy, by the way, for anyone listening. I love it. All three of them. I would read that book. But when someone asks me, what do you think about the way those two movies work together? That requires like an honest engagement. Like, let's really sit down. Like, let's take Rey like she was a real woman in history and be like, this is what the arc is. I love that stuff. I love trivia. I play in a Galaxy podcast trivia game. We should get you in there one of these days. That'd be a lot of fun. You probably got. I
would love to.
Probably got some deep cuts. I'll have to connect you guys with our friend Eli from In a Galaxy. It's a lot of fun to know all the little details. What episode of the Bad Batch did that's all great. But why does it matter that they went to that planet in the Bad Batch? What actually happened thematically? That's why I like English class way more than I like science or math class,
Yeah, good analogy. One is the interpretation and examination of something, and the other is more purely facts.
Yeah.
Now, what are the top 3 elements that make Star Wars to you?
I'm trying to think of how I should word this first one. The first thing that it needs is to be relentlessly optimistic. It can be dark. Those are very different things. It can be tragic. Look at Revenge of the Sith. Look at Andor. Look at the middle chapters of a lot of these shows and books. It will get to places of horror and devastation. Rogue One and Revenge of the Sith and Andor are probably the 3 keys there.
Well, the death of Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen.
It's horrific. Yeah,
just one of the most horrific shots in the movie.
Burnt alive right out of the gate at the beginning of that story, but it has to be fundamentally hopeful. Dave Filoni talks about how George told him that you have to make these stories hopeful because kids need that, and that's important to me in it too. It was a big talking point that during the making of Andor, the fight the Empire was very close to being fuck the Empire. Yes. And everyone, was like, oh, that would have been so cool. And I get it. I actually don't think they should have done that. not because it affects the themes of the story, but because with that optimism comes accessibility, which is the second thing. See, I'm doing some segue. The second thing is that it has to be optimistic, and it has to believe in the right progressive ideas and be what it's always been about with the world, as the world changes, and it's that accessibility is point two. Everyone should be able to engage in it, and I think that if a child couldn't hear the line comfortably without a parent being like, then it shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And like that to me, like, you know how like the government has that definition of what is indecent material, like, you know it when you see it.
Yep.
That's how I feel about that. If the word fuck in an episode of Star Wars television would make some parents go, oh, cover your ears, it shouldn't be there. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is pulp. It has to be pulpy as hell. My least favorite Star Wars things get further away from it. My favorite Star Wars things lean all the way into it. And it's like, that's not for everybody, but for me, it's like, it's so essential that we do things that are because the world is like that. Like in Force Awakens, when that movie started, there were a few moments where I was like, Star Wars is back. Like, it's back for real. You know, seeing the Falcon or Finn and Poe escaping in the TIE fighter. But one of those moments is when BB-8 rolls away from the village and that creature sticks its head out of the sand.
Yes.
And we just linger on it for a second. I was like, we're back, because that is Star Wars pulp. Why the fuck did we linger on that creature for a minute? I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's there because the world is like that. Things happen and things are weird. Like when you get to Maz's castle and Han tells them not to look at any of it. Or even in Andor, the most serious that gets the furthest away from the fantasy still has, what is it, Dewey and Freedy, the 2Z2 guys that help him off in Arcana. Like, why are there two big alien cyborgs just chilling by this beach cliff? I don't know. Like, because they are. That is so important.
They were going fishing or something.
Exactly.
That's awesome. What is your favorite Star Wars memory?
God, that's difficult. My favorite Star Wars memory. At the risk of it being a shameless promo for my own show, my favorite Star Wars memory was being able to have Rian Johnson on the podcast.
Oh, sweet.
So doing the Rian episode, because it was for charity, we raised money for Make-A-Wish, and an anonymous donor, Ryan, gave a good amount of money. We did it on our terms. No manager, the manager was on the emails, but like there was no, you can talk about this, you can't talk about this. There was no pre-approval.
Like dealing with publicity and the pre-approval of questions.
I pitched the idea their way and his team said, we're in, what do you want to do? I said, I want to do this. They said, great. And we got on there and we just talked like you and I are talking now. And so to have a show with not just one of my favorite filmmakers, but with somebody that made one of these movies, and to just be able to talk like to fans and to people that work in different sides of the creative industries, and he's of a generation before mine. It just felt very cyclical and cool. And the kid in me that saw Attack of the Clones and was like, I have to know how these were made. And then finding the Leonard Maltin, George Lucas interviews or things like that, being able to do one like of my own was very, very gratifying. And I do not take it for granted. It was very, very special. And he is the best.
That's fantastic. That's amazing. It's especially in this world, it's really exciting to be able to interact with the creators who create the things you love and see the humanity behind your own fantasy of it.
Absolutely.
My final question for you. You go to Skywalker Ranch and there at the gates, George Lucas greets you. What do you say to him?
I go to the Skywalker gates? I got to process the idea of being there. I've never been to the ranch. And so George Lucas greets me at the ranch. See, I'm such like a, I gotta know the lore of every situation. I'm over here like, does he know I'm coming over? Just like what happens?
He does. He has just listened to your show with Rian Johnson.
Oh God. I think honestly, wait, hold on. I'm sorry. Can you repeat the last part of the question? What does he say to me or what do I say to him?
What do you say to him?
What do I say to him? I think my first question for George Lucas would be, what was the last thing you watched that made you feel an emotional reaction? I don't think, and not because George is notoriously dry, that it is part of that, but I would just love to know, like, George, would you give me permission to go through your watch list and your playlists and your bookshelf? Like, what's going on now? I honestly think I would be mortified to bring up Star Wars. I don't know if I could. I'm sure it would come up. I would do my damnedest if I was there to not wear anything Star Wars related, like I am literally right now with a Lucasfilm hoodie on. But like, I just think I would be like, you know, what are you looking forward to eating next? What's for dinner? Do you drink wine? Like, what temperature do you like it in the house? Like, there are so many. I would love to do one of those like classic old school magazine profiles that are really cool, rarer and rarer. They still happen from time to time. There's a really great profile that just came out on, God, who was it? It was Jeremy Strong. There's a great Jeremy Strong profile where they talk about walking with him by the, you know, vacation house that his family has. And like, I'm like, oh, if I could do a profile of George, just be like, I hung out with George at the ranch for a couple days. This is my impression of the man. That's a dream. So yeah, it would be something very simple and non-Star Wars related.
That's good. It goes back to your quest to find the why of everything. You want to find the why of George Lucas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alden, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your point of view. You said some things that I've never heard said that way before, and I really liked it, especially the idea of this search out of loneliness and finding connection through Star Wars.
Absolutely, man. That's what it's all about. And the idea that because some people decided to tell these stories, that we all have something that we immediately deeply understand about each other is very rare. There's not a lot of things like that.
No, there isn't. And it should be cherished and celebrated. And that's the best part. The best part is celebrating Star Wars, because there are so many different ways to celebrate it, like there are so many different genres within Star Wars. There's the seriousness of Andor. There's the campiness of Ahsoka. There's the hopeful adrenaline fun of Skeleton Crew. It's all just amazing. But Alden, thank you so much. Where can people find you?
You can find me personally, and before I even plug, I really thank you, man. Like, the lovely time, and it's always great to talk about sort of like the humanity of all this. So thank you. You're doing great work. Go back.
Thank you.
You know, forget me. Go listen to Vanessa Marshall and check out some of these other ones. Like, thank you for doing this, and I really appreciate it. But if you like what you heard and you want to tip me up about Star Wars and tell me why your ship is cooler than the N1 Starfighter, if you dare. It's that Alden Diaz, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, I guess, Threads, all those places. ThatAldenDiaz. Ahch-to Radio was on hiatus during the strikes, is going to be coming back soon. I have a bunch of people that I'm going to be hitting up, some that you've definitely heard of. Excited to get back into those. And Anytime with Ken and Alden airs on Ken Napzok's YouTube channel and all your podcast platforms every Friday.
Excellent. And all those, I'll put a lot of these links, your Instagram, socials, and to Ahch-to Radio in the podcast notes. And again, thank you. May the Force be with you. Hi, this is Dave, and before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners, and that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 in the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars.